This episode is brought to you by Commerce, parent company of BigCommerce, Feedonomics, and MakeSwift.
If you look at consumer behavior over the last little while, there was a 4,700% increase over the last 12 months in consumers accessing e-commerce sites after using one of those platforms, so a ChatGPT, a Perplexity, or similar. And so we're now being led to the sites, but we're ultimately transacting on the e-commerce sites. And I think the exciting thing that's going to happen is pretty soon, with the right prompting, we're going to be able to actually tell that agent to go buy something for us, and they're going to buy it.
Welcome to Retail Remix. Any retailer will tell you that payment is one of the hardest facets of e-commerce to get right, but also one of the most crucial. Now, with AI-driven evolutions in e-commerce, a whole new set of payment questions are bubbling up. Walmart, Etsy, and other major brands are letting customers buy their products directly in ChatGPT. But if something goes wrong in the transaction, who helps resolve it? How can brands maintain their customer relationships and standards when AI agents operate as the middlemen? How can retailers ensure data security if the sale isn't happening on their platform? These are just some of the burning questions we have for today's guest, Rob Cameron, who has worked in the payments sector for more than 20 years and now leads global acceptance at Visa. He helps clients navigate the complexities of digital commerce every day, and today he's going to help us do the same. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Retail Remix. I'm your host, Nicole Silberstein, Editor-in-Chief at Retail Touchpoints, and today we're lucky to have with us Rob Cameron of Visa, who's going to help us dig into the payment side of this whole Agentic AI conversation. Thanks for being here, Rob.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thanks for having me, Nicole.
So I want to start by just getting a little bit better understanding of what you do at Visa. For me and probably many of the listeners, the title Global Head of Acceptance Solutions is a little bit opaque. So what does that mean? What do you do over there?
Sure. So I lead what we call acceptance solutions globally. We help merchants, big and small, payment processors and acquirers all around the world solve three core challenges. The first is just the increasing complexity of payments. We help them solve for higher success rates, manage fraud, manage digital acceptance, in-person acceptance, all the way through to when things go wrong, and help around chargebacks and disputes and automations there. So that whole gamut. We also help them with connectivity. So how do they embed their payments into the apps that they use to manage their business? So think about a platform like Shopify or a Salesforce. And then we also help them with profitability. So how do they either take cost out of their operation or move into new markets? And we do this by taking all of the assets that Visa has on the seller side of the ecosystem, and we make them available through a common platform we call the Visa Acceptance Platform. And it's a little analogous to what Amazon did with their computing capability with Amazon Web Services, only we do it with payment services so that a merchant can pull down just the services they need in order to solve their problems. And we do that across, more than 100 countries and at massive scale.
Interesting. So, you mentioned the increasing complexity of payments. And in the world of commerce, AI has caused a lot of big shifts this year, and in many cases, more complexity as well. I'm curious how you're seeing all of that, the ChatGPT, the Perplexity, these conversations that are happening around shopping and now turning into actual transactions, how you're seeing all of that play out at your end of the equation.
It's super exciting time in commerce. For a payments nerd, it's all kind of stayed interesting the last little while. And it used to be just increasing consumer expectations, right? From Gen Z up, we grew up with video games where payments happen in an instant, and that's kind of our expectation. Now we have to manage agents. And if you look at consumer behavior over the last little while, there was a 4,700% increase over the last 12 months in consumers accessing e-commerce sites after using one of those platforms like you talked about, so a ChatGPT, a Perplexity, or similar. And so we're now being led to the sites, but we're ultimately transacting on the e-commerce sites. And I think the exciting thing that's going to happen is pretty soon, with the right prompting, we're going to be able to actually tell that agent to go buy something for us, and they're going to buy it.
Yeah, I think everybody feels that coming. And we saw the first maybe major step happen just a few weeks weeks ago with ChatGPT and all of its partnerships with Walmart, Shopify, Salesforce, but it's not quite there yet. It's not we're not seeing a 4,700% increase in people who are buying stuff in ChatGPT yet. We all can kind of feel it coming though. So what are you doing on your end at Visa to prepare to be a part of this new world that we all kind of foresee of agentic commerce, where agents are doing all of this for us?
Yeah, well, at Visa, we wanted to be out early, and we were out early with those platforms. And then recently, we actually announced the Trusted Agent Protocol, because what we want to drive for is trust, so consumer trust, and also security. And then we want it to be open. So ultimately, we want a world where I can securely send my properly authorized agent out to make a purchase on my behalf. And they should be able to purchase it from any website, anywhere I tell it, right? Within the bounds of that. And to do that, we launched the Trusted Agent Protocol a couple weeks ago. And we've had other card brands also join. And so we think there's a formation of some standards emerging. But as you said, there's not a lot of that commerce happening yet. And what we're trying to do is lay the foundations, protect trust, protect security for this ecosystem to kind of develop organically now. And so that's how we're kind of evolving. And it's terrific to be partnered with these amazing brands from retail to the platforms and working through this almost in real time.
There's been a lot of talk of protocols lately, and I'm hoping, can you just help me understand what exactly an AI protocol is? Because you're not the only one using it. It's not a Visa specific or a Visa agnostic offering, is it?
We are trying to. So we're partnering with people like the OpenID Foundation, EMVCo, who makes standards for how chip cards work. And so we're basically partnering with the different standard bodies and trying to establish some frameworks so that when we go out as consumers with a good agent, it can be recognized. And that agent can be recognized, intent can be captured, what did the consumer want, a credential can be then securely, so think about my payment card details, transferred to the merchant, and they can know what to expect and know how to receive it. Because what we don't want is a world where either rogue agents are out, because there's lots of bots out there, right? We know them today. And so we're trying to create standards, and it'll work at a lower level of the internet with companies like Cloudflare and the underlying kind of framework of the internet to help us recognize good agents from bad and allow consumers to know that they're secure when they're out shopping.
So, I mean, along those lines, then, though, I mean, we already see consumers trusting these tools to help them shop and find a product. But it feels like a whole nother level of trust that's required for them to want these machines to handle booking of a trip for them, for example, or actually execute a transaction on their behalf. What do you think will really be required on the consumer side? I mean, you talked about what you're trying to build, kind of the plumbing to build that trust from an ecosystem side of the equation, but what will be required for consumers to reach the point where they actually trust this and will put in all of this sensitive data?
I think it's going to take a bit of time, probably less time than we all think. You go back to searching 3 years ago, I was Google, all my search just happened to be, how I approached that. And now I choose from a few different platforms where I use either a ChatGPT or a Perplexity or another platform, and I'll actually do my search there. And I used to click the original content all the time. And now I'm starting to actually trust the agent, right? I'm starting to trust the platform and what it brings me back. And if I've got questions on it, then I'll click and head for the original content. And so I feel like the evolution for consumers to then trust a purchase, for me personally, initially, I'm going to want it to bring back, even if it's armed with my credentials, I'm going to want to see the item, see the trip, see the service, and say, yes, this does match my expectation, and probably approve it. But I can also see a point where I get used to being good at it and saying, yeah, go buy me the paint that I need for the weekend project or the shoes in size 10 for my kids' football game or whatever on the weekend. So I can see that coming. But I think for a lot of us, it's going to probably start with an approval before we go full delegation.
Yeah. I mean, that speaks a lot to how I also feel about it, just on a personal level, a consumer level. I think it's going to take a few transactions where I have a little bit of control and they go well and there's no problems. But the flip side of that then is I do think merchants have to be really careful, because if there is a problem, if consumer has an issue in the initial stages as they're testing this out, that could be really have long-term damage to adoption of these kinds of solutions, don't you think?
Absolutely. And I think that's why I'm happy that it's, some amazing brands or some of the early players that are approaching it in a thoughtful way. And, they're not going to risk their brand by bad consumer experiences. They've got great refund policies and other things at some of the retailers you named. So I think that there will be issues for 100%. There always are when new technologies come in. But I think given the quality of the brands and how they're approaching it, and they are treating it as pilot. So I think that that'll get some of the good learnings that are required. And we see in a lot of, the efficacy and just how much better these agents are getting, even every quarter, is kind of amazing. And so I think that also gives us some confidence.
Yeah. I mean, it is all moving so fast, and the improvements are striking, and they're happening not over the course of years, they're happening over the course of weeks. It's a really interesting time for sure to be in this space. Where do you think it's all really headed? I mean, do you think eventually we're going to have a good chunk of our shopping, most of us, that we let AI agents handle?
I think it's going to be a mix. Like, I know I've got friends, my wife, who love to just scroll and shop and look, and it's like relaxing. It's, whether you're on a social media app or you're, looking at original content. And I don't think that's going anywhere. I think people actually enjoy it. It's like going to the mall and shopping in person. And so I think that there's a whole percentage of the way we shop that will continue, in my mind, for the foreseeable future. And then I think there's others that will adopt and, who hate doing that and that are going to love the idea of empowering an agent to go off on their behalf and do what they would consider a mundane task. And from a merchant standpoint, the way I'd look at it is, this is my existing business, and, potentially some of that contracts as people shift. But then there's this whole other cohort of customers that are going to be brought to me. And so I think the challenge will be optimizing not just for the human, but also making sure that agents can recognize the items you have, are aware of your shipping terms and all the things that we know that they're going to be looking for, and are kind of optimized for both cohorts. And I think the platforms are going to do some of this for merchants. Like, I don't think they're going to have to figure it all out one by one. If they're using a big platform like a Shopify or similar, you can expect them to help the merchants do a lot of those things. But I do think you're going to have sometimes two groups of consumers. And depending on the type of site, obviously it'll steer more towards consumers still going to you or consumers coming from an agent.
Yeah. Or all consumers might start bucketing it into two things, like the shopping you like to do and the shopping you don't like to do. And so you want an agent to do it for you.
Absolutely.
I think we all have that bucket of like, oh, I hate this. I mean, mine is grocery shopping. I hate having to grocery shop every week. I do think it's going to be a little while before these agents can do my entire weekly grocery shop for me, though.
It's hard, right? Grocery shopping I went to the same place. My head was like, don't like grocery shopping, willing to do like gift shopping still.
Yeah.
Although an agent to help me gift shop more effectively would be a good. I don't want to totally outsource thoughtfulness, but I think I could be more thoughtful with an agent.
Yeah. Oh, people are already using it for that this year. I've seen a few examples of prompts that I intend to employ for my holiday shopping this year.
Very good.
So what then should brands and retailers really be considering as they start to adopt some of these agentic solutions, and not just integrating with third-party platforms like ChatGPT, but also bringing some of these agentic capabilities into their own ecosystems?
So they should be piloting things, right? They should be trying. We've launched the Visa Agentic Toolkit, which allows you to access platforms and use natural language prompts like your gift giving to say, hey, go query this database and create invoices for all these people and send them out with payment links, and do some of those things with just a natural language prompt and an upload as opposed to with code. And so there's a lot of tools like that available. We're continuing to make more available on our own platform so that people can get used to that agentic style of natural language prompting and less involvement. And so I think it's going to empower business owners and more business, less technical people to actually be able to self-serve more as they start to use these tools. So I think that's one. I think two, absolutely, as I mentioned before, I think it's thinking about how your website's cataloged and how you expose terms and conditions and all those things to know that they are going to be read by agents and to think through how that's going to be recognized. And I think optimizing for that new cohort is something people should start to test and trial and understand sooner than later, because as you said, it's going to happen more quickly. And I think that's, part of the journey is just going to be staying current on how this is evolving.
Yeah. Well, and agents are more likely to actually read the terms and conditions as opposed to a consumer. So that is one to be aware of. Are there any particular risks that you think companies should be on the lookout for? I mean, you mentioned bots, the prevalence of bots out there, but there's also been talk about fears of fraud, loss of data ownership. Of course, there's always security concerns when you're dealing with any kind of sensitive data like you are with payments. So what are the risks that you think should be top of mind, and what should retailers be keeping in mind to mitigate those?
Well, we're at Visa, we're one of the true pioneers in using AI and machine learning for fraud prevention. But there's another side of that equation that's clearly doing similar to try and do nefarious things and commit fraud. And so that's why, going back to launching our trusted agent protocol, keep being in dialogue with the industry and big players around how we set foundations that allow us to manage risk and protect the all-important consumer trust. We're also doing things to ensure we protect consumer data, give consumers the right to share data with the agent. If it makes the agent more effective at shopping for them and they want to share their data, then we're happy to have them do that. But we want to make sure consumer is in control at all times. So we're really setting up a lot of those elements early on in the process so that as this thing scales and gets to everyday use, it's got the right foundation in place.
Yeah, it does. Even as you're speaking to, it makes me feel like the partners that you choose to work with on this is a really critical choice at the outset. And just picking the right partners to test with and try things out with as you start to move into this space.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think as well, because these tools are all available, it's hard to really predict who the winners, obviously OpenAI is going to be in it, but there's a lot of other companies around them or derivatives using their capabilities with a different steer. And so I think it's going to be very interesting space to watch. It feels a little like, as we got into early e-commerce and the internet boom, and I'm sure there'll be some winners. There'll also, I'm sure, be some companies that don't come of anything. But ultimately, the brands, if you look at the brands that were kind of pre to now, many of the great brands, like you mentioned, a Walmart or others, like they've weathered through these technology changes. And I would expect they'll continue to be trusted brands that we can rely on, whether we're doing the shopping ourselves or through an agent.
All right. Before we let you go, we have one final set of questions, our mixtape rapid fire questions. Are you ready for these ones? They're actually a little easier. Okay.
All right. Good.
First question is, as somebody who's worked in payments for a long, long time, what is your biggest payment pet peeve as a consumer?
I hate when I'm using my credential and someone declines me. So that false decline. So I know it's me. I'm trying to buy something, and for some reason, computer says no. And sometimes I'm like a total nerd and I'll send emails and try and figure out. But a lot of times I'm like a dad or a husband or busy. And in those cases, I'm like copy, paste to search, find item somewhere else, buy it somewhere else. So I think in my day job, I spend a lot of time, helping optimize success rates. So I probably have a lower tolerance for that as a result. So that's my...
Yeah, I would love to see you pull out the Visa card, and be like, this can't be right. And by the way, I'm a big wig over at Visa, so I know.
Issuer, I'll call and be like, why did you reject reject this. It's clearly me. And I'm nice to them, I think. So at least
you're a nerd, but maybe also a nightmare for customer service.
I try and be nice.
Is there anything that you still use cash for?
My usual is I still tip in cash sometimes, although I have found sometimes I use one of my apps will actually use, and it uses Visa Direct, which is our service to send. And so one of my apps, I've actually been able to pay the wallet of someone I want to tip when I was in Africa. So I paid an M-Pesa wallet with my debit card. So I'm finding ways to do it that are still convenient. But we all realize that these individuals, some of them, their main earning source is tips. So I'm not going to be sorry, I only use cards.
Yeah.
So there is a little bit of cash that gets tipped by me, but I'm trying to figure it out.
I don't know why, but I would be really sad to see cash go away completely. I don't know. What about you? Are you hoping for a post-cash future?
I just think I believe that it ends up lifting things up. It's more efficient, and we're open, right? So we have from bank account services, we have debit, pay now. So we've got a variety, and in my part of the business, we accept everything, not just Visa credentials. But electronic payments is better, and that's why we're seeing most markets, they're trying to reduce cash. But I don't know. I'm probably on the other side of that argument. But, to my earlier point, yes, there are cases where I'll still use it.
Even bake sales at my kids' school now, you just pay with your phone.
Oh. Yeah, there you go. See?
I know. What is one thing that you can't wait for Agentic AI to do for you?
Oh, I think you hit it. If there's a way to get the grocery piece right so that, it's a little more predictive. I hate throwing things out. So I think I'll find ways to eat stuff on that last day. But, sometimes you can't keep up.
In that way, too, you could almost envision a future where AI could actually help you buy better so that things don't go bad before you're able to eat them.
That's good. I like it.
What's the best piece of financial advice you've ever received?
If you can afford to, someone told me, years ago, to pay a little bit more of your mortgage every month. And that was when interest rates were lower, which we remember. And, interest rates started high for me because I'm kind of older. And then they were low for a long time. And during that time, a lot of people were don't pay your mortgage. And so I think that these things go up and down, but if you can, it's a good place to park any extra.
Nice. Last one is, you mentioned on X that you're an avid runner. So I'm curious because I love talking with people who are athletes. They have such a great approach to business that often comes from their experience as an athlete. So what would you say is your favorite running analogy for the business world?
Oh, definitely play a long game. So I've always been a distance runner, and you've got to pace yourself. But I also think in business, you've got to remember you're going to keep seeing these people again and again. So you've always just got to play this long game and long relationships and always do the right thing, because it's otherwise it'll catch you. And so I think it's play a long game.
I know there's really no running analogy, just like marathon analogies for business. They're fantastic and always so true.
And I'm a bad sprinter, so the only way I'm going to win distance.
Well, thank you, Rob, for being here today and helping us dig into this, sharing a little bit of your nerdiness with us, because we're all becoming nerds in all of this in a certain way. So thank you.
Absolutely. So nice to be with you, Nicole. Have a great day.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. If this conversation prompted your own burning questions about where this all is headed, then stop by the Retail Touchpoints page on LinkedIn and share your thoughts. And also let us know who else you'd like to hear from in future episodes. Thanks, everyone. Talk to you all soon. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Retail Remix. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a future episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. Until next time, keep mixing it up.